Hello and welcome to Make the Dream Reality, How to Become an ND. I am Dr. JoAnn Yanez. I'm the Executive Director for the Association of Accredited Naturopathic Medical Colleges. And before we begin today, I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. So this webinar will be recorded and will be up on our website and our YouTube channel, hopefully later on today, technology willing. And so before we begin, just want to go through one other thing. So if you have questions during the course of the webinar, there is a control panel on the corner of your screen. If you open that up and you drop into the questions section, please use that area for any questions that you may have during the course of the webinar. Don't use the chat one because I'm not going to be looking in there. I'll look in the question section. So with that, that's kind of all the housekeeping we have for the day. So today will be recorded. We'll be hearing from both myself and Eve Adams. Eve is a proud member of a longtime advocate of the naturopathic medicine field. She is a very strong part of the SCNM community. Prior to working at SCNM, she worked at Valley of the Sun United Way in development. She graduated from the Arizona State University with a bachelor's degree in communication and nonprofit management. She's actively involved with a number of community and nonprofit organizations, and in her spare time enjoys yoga, hiking, exploring the beautiful state of Arizona, and being a really strong proponent of naturopathic medicine. I am the Executive Director for the Association of Accredited Naturopathic Medical Colleges, Dr. JoAnn Yanez, graduate actually of the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. I also completed a residency there, and I currently serve as the chair for the Academic Collaborative of Integrative Health, which represents all of the licensed disciplines for integrative health and medicine across the U.S. And so that's kind of in addition to my J job. So with that, I think we can go ahead and get started with the webinar today. I'm really excited to talk about this. We get so many questions here at AANMC in regards to how to be an ND and what does that look like? What are the career options? How do we fund the profession? And so with that, we're going to kind of go through a few things. So let's make sure I'm in the right window here. So, make sure I'm showing the right thing so that everybody can see my screen. Here we go. Alrighty. So one of the things that we see in naturopathic medicine across the board, our students are really, really passionate. And one of the things that we notice across the board with our student population is we'll very much hear things like, I want to be a doctor, but I want to use a holistic approach to patient care, or I have a passion for nutrition or prevention or mind-body medicine, or wow, I had a family member that was healed with naturopathic medicine or integrative medicine approaches, and I know that there are other ways to be a doctor. And so very often we'll hear these types of themes coming from our students. What are the AANMC member schools? Well, all of the member schools are recognized by the United States Department of Education, the Council on Naturopathic Medical Education, which is the programmatic accrediting body, and all of our graduates can sit for the North American Board of Naturopathic Medical Examiners, which is NABNE. Only graduates of AANMC schools can sit for the licensing exams, which is required for licensure. There's a different requirement for the province of Ontario, and that if you're interested in practicing in Ontario, you can easily get in touch with the Ontario examiners for information on that. So a lot of times we'll hear from folks, what's the curriculum like? What do you study in naturopathic medical school? And I can say personally as a graduate, as well as having taught as faculty at ND schools, that the education is so comprehensive. You get the biomedical education, all of the foundational work to become a physician. So that's anatomy. I always talk about the ologies. As you'll see on that left-hand column, and even the right, there are lots of ologies. Ology just means the study of. So you have the study of the body, the study of the biochemistry in the body, physiology, the study of human cells, all of the things that give you the building blocks for a solid medical education. The clinical education also focuses on conventional diagnosis and treatment, but the real beauty of naturopathic medicine lies in the naturopathic therapeutics. And so woven throughout this curriculum, starting from day one, are the naturopathic principles, the therapeutic order, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, all the things that make naturopathic medicine unique. So what are those ND therapeutics? So in naturopathic school, we learn about nutrition, we learn about mind-body medicine, lifestyle counseling, homeopathy, hydrotherapy, botanical medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. There are so many things that form the building blocks of naturopathic therapeutics. And when I think about patient care, it really is so empowering to have many different tools at your convenience to help patients and meet them where they're at. Some patients will really be ready for, making big lifestyle changes, and other folks may not be, and you may need to use some other therapies first. So it's really powerful to be able to have so many different therapies at your fingertips so that you can meet patients where they need to be. The therapeutic order is, and I always think about this slide in the terms of how naturopathic doctors think. And so the therapeutic order follows the foundation. So if you look, and I know the words are a little small, but if you look at the base of that pyramid, it's establishing the foundation for optimal health. So what does this mean? This is stress, sleep, good nutrition, exercise, healthy relationships, all of the things that are necessary to form a solid foundation for health. As you go up this pyramid, you go up into higher force interventions, things like manipulation and supplements. And at the very top would be synthetic chemical-based drugs and surgery and, excuse me, and more of those high force interventions. So the theory behind this is that we start with the most basic, gentle means to work with patients, and then we move up from there. And so it really isn't that naturopathic doctors are against drugs or surgery, and it's part of some of the things that we learn in naturopathic medical school. It's just that typically we're going to explore less invasive, lower force therapies first. And if this doesn't make sense or folks have questions along the way, I'm happy to take questions after we go through toward the later part of the webinar today. So the 6 principles of naturopathic medicine form the building block, the foundations for naturopathic medicine. So they are: first, do no harm, honoring the healing power of nature, identifying and treating the cause, the doctor is teacher, treating the whole person, and prevention. And the 6 principles of naturopathic medicine are core. And what you'll notice in naturopathic school is, as you're getting all of those ology classes, as I like to call them, you will have the principles woven through, and you will have anatomy and biochemistry, but in the context of how does this play with the whole person? What is something looking like in a different organ system? How do all the organ systems interplay? And looking at identifying and focusing on that cause of illness. And so this is really, really core to naturopathic thought and naturopathic practice. Clinical rotations occur and may start as early as in the first year of school. That will vary depending on the course of study that you're looking at. There's a minimum of 1,200 hours for clinical rotations, and all of the schools actually exceed that time. You'll find our clinical education happens in a team-based approach, and what that means is you will be studying alongside other professions. So you may have teachers that are medical doctors, you may have folks who are chiropractors, or acupuncturists, massage therapists, mind-body psychiatrists, conventional physicians, nurses, physician assistants, etc. on your team. And the really wonderful thing about this is it teaches folks how to work within a system. All of the ND colleges also have community outreach clinic shifts, and what happens in these places is you'll go out into the community and you'll see special populations and how their care differs, and then there will also be specialty focused shifts, and on those shifts you may learn things like women's medicine or pediatrics or cancer. And so each of those specialty focused shifts will give you a special idea of how naturopathic medicine is focused within that specialty. The AANMC Professional Competencies was created a number of years ago and also guides the expectations of what a graduate of naturopathic medical education is expected to know. So if you're curious about what NDs learn, this is available on our website, and you're free to take a look at that and go through and see a little bit more depth of what NDs get in school. Oftentimes we're asked, so how does this compare to conventional medical education? And you'll see that the average medical school and the hours that naturopathic doctors get for their contact hours and clinical hours and is very comparable, and in some cases higher in didactic hours and hours such than medical school. And so it is a very rigorous program. It's a wonderful program, though, and one that I think anybody who has been through will say profoundly changes you. And that is one of the things that I think people will recognize in naturopathic school is not only you're learning medicine for patients, but so often what you're learning can be translated back to your own life and your own family. And it really is a wonderful foundation for your own personal career as well as your own personal health. And so with this, I'm going to turn it over to Eve so she can speak a bit more about the prerequisites and some of the academic components for let's get this slide over to Eve. There we go. So she can speak a bit further on the prerequisites and some of the admissions requirements. Thank you so much. And Eve, are you ready to go?
I am. Can you see my screen, JoAnn? Oh. Let me just pull that up. Oh. Perfect. All right. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Awesome. Thanks so much, JoAnn. And thanks so much for joining us on the call this afternoon. It's always exciting to talk with students who are interested in joining this amazing life-saving profession. I love being a part of this community. I know firsthand how profound the medicine is, and I love working with prospective students who are considering joining this amazing movement in healthcare. So JoAnn talked with you a little bit about the profession, and now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about what it takes to become a student at one of the accredited schools. So let's just start off with some fundamental prereqs. So one of the fundamental prereqs is, of course, that you do need to have an undergraduate degree. Although many of the students who have come into the various programs have an undergraduate degree in the biological sciences, we still have a significant number of students that studied something else. Typically, these students didn't know that they wanted to be a doctor while they were in undergrad. Maybe they found the profession a little bit later in life, and that's okay, as long as all of the schools will accept students that don't have an undergraduate degree, but they would ask that you go back and take some prerequisite science coursework, okay? So there are a number of classes that are required by the various schools, and typically those are in the area of biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, and there might be some additional coursework required of each of the various schools, like biochemistry, physics, math, and psychology. And again, this afternoon we're speaking in generalities, but what I would encourage you to do is, based on the schools that you're interested in pursuing, that you check out the specific requirements that they have and make sure that you're meeting those as you're going through the exploration and ultimately the application process. So, of course, in addition, all of the schools also have requirements around the cumulative GPA as well as the GPA of prerequisite coursework. And one other sort of fundamental prereq that I'll add is that all of the schools are ground programs, meaning that you would have to relocate and actually move to the state where the school is located. Some of the schools might have online components to their program, but you would have to relocate and move to the state where any given program is housed. So this slide shows you an example of some of the undergraduate majors that students will come in with. Again, there is a good percentage of students that come in with a biological sciences background, but there are just as many other majors represented. And this slide shows you a distribution of the various ages. So we do get a number of students that come into the programs straight from undergrad, but again, we get just as many students who either find out about the profession later, and so who are not coming out straight from undergrad. So at my institution, the average incoming age of our students is 29. And I know that varies a little bit from school to school, but we do see students of all ages coming into the programs. So I think one of the great things about the profession is that there are so many different paths that you can take after graduation. Although the majority of our graduates become clinicians and ultimately come into the program because they want to be a clinician, you can also work in academia. You can work in media relations, you can do research. There's just so many different things that you can do. I know many of our alum write books, or they're contributors to various blogs, or on the local news talking about natural health. And so, you know, if that's something that you're interested in, you can do that in addition to being a clinician, or, you know, or sort of formulate a practice where that's what you do primarily. Another wonderful thing about the profession is that you will be trained to do everything from pediatrics to geriatrics and everything in between. And so whether you choose to specialize or focus your practice based on a given population or based on various modalities, you can really customize that based on your interests. The slide that you're looking at now shows the specialties in the profession from our alumni who completed an alumni survey a few years ago. So you can see that some of the top things are digestive, GI disorders, nutrition. You know, that's something that we know brings a lot of individuals to this profession, is just a recognition that there's so much that eating the right foods or even the wrong foods, of course, can do to health and wellness. So it's really not surprising that those are the top two focus areas. Women's health, endocrinology, I won't go through the list, but you can see that there on your slide. And of course, there are many associations that support some of these specialties. And so if you know off the bat that you're interested in doing something specific, we would definitely encourage you to research those to get a little bit more information about how they organize themselves. All right, so let's talk about applying to the programs. So we've already talked about the prereqs and that you need a bachelor's degree. What I do want to point out, though, is that you do not have to have your bachelor's degree completed or your prerequisites completely done before you apply to a program. All of the schools will allow students to apply while they're finishing up that degree or while they're finishing up a prereq or two. So all of the schools, of course, have application processes. Two of them, CCNM and SCNM, use NDCAS, which is the centralized application service, and the other schools, Bastyr, Boucher, NUHS, and NUNM, have direct applications to their institutions. Of course, all of us would want copies of your transcripts, official transcripts, that is, letters of recommendation. The number of recommendations would vary by institution, a resume, and then some of the schools do require an in-person interview if your application meets the requirements. Okay. Of course, financial aid, we know that that's an important consideration as students are making the decision to go into ND school. And the programs are, of course, recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, and the majority of our students do take out federal aid to pay for the program. So you can see some of those details there. Direct unsubsidized loans are, of course, an option, and generally those cover 100% of tuition and living expenses. And you know, if students need money above and beyond that, or if they've capped out some of their loan limits, private loans tend to be available. And the first step for pursuing financial aid is similar to the process that it is in undergrad, and that's, of course, completing a FAFSA. And for the students that choose to attend one of the two Canadian institutions, there is of course aid available for those students as well. Some of that varies a little bit by province to province, but those schools could of course help talk with you through your options there. But of course, the first opportunity or the first step would be to completing an online application through the respective province or territory. Okay. So we've talked a bit about the schools, but we haven't quite pointed out where those are. So there are two schools in Canada, the Boucher Institute in Vancouver, as well as Canadian College in Ontario. In the United States, there is a school in Seattle, Bastyr. Bastyr also has a campus in San Diego. There's the National University of Natural Medicine in Portland. There's SCNM in Phoenix and NUHS, National University of Health Sciences in Chicago. So, of course, one of the next steps for you is to determine which school is the best choice for you. And there's a number of different things that you can consider as you're making that decision. Of course, some of the things to include would be, of course, the location and the climate. Do you prefer, to be in the sun, or do you prefer to have a little bit more variety in terms of seasons? You might want to consider class size, some nuances in curriculum. I think that's a really important consideration. All of the schools, generally teach a similar curriculum. We're all held to the same standards by the CNME, the Council on Naturopathic Medical Education. But having said that, all schools, of course, do have some nuances and some things that they would say that they specialize in. So would definitely have you consider that as you're making your decision. Of course, the sense of community and also how you feel when you're on campus. Budgets allowing, we definitely encourage students to visit as many schools as you can to get a sense of what the student life in the community is like and to see if that's someplace that you can envision yourself for the next 4 years. Also consider the extracurricular activities. All of the schools have student clubs and different ways that students can get involved, and that's something that might be important to you. And of course, looking at school examination results. That, of course, is talking about the NCLEX, which is the exam that students have to take twice, once after your second year, and that's the NCLEX 1, which is on the basic sciences coursework, and then you take NCLEX 2 after you graduate from the curriculum. So looking at those results might be important to you as well. Okay. So in addition as part of finding that best fit, as I mentioned, we really encourage you to visit as many schools as you can, and there's a lot of different ways and opportunities to do that. Almost all of the schools have open houses, whether that be once a year or once a quarter, where of course you can come and tour the school, hear from faculty, meet with admissions and financial aid representatives. Those are really a great way to get a sense of the school's culture. You could, of course, always just visit to get a tour of campus. Many of the programs also have student for a day programs where you can sit in on classes and sit in on clinical shifts, and that's another great way to get a feel for student life. And some of the schools also have online info sessions. So if you are not able to physically visit a campus, we would encourage you to take advantage of those. Some of the schools also have virtual tours on their websites, and that would be another good way to see what that campus at least physically looks like. So, of course, highly encourage you to meet with admissions advisors and get your transcripts evaluated. That's also, of course, a perfect opportunity for some individualized questions, question and answer sessions. All of the schools are committed to providing as much information as we can to help you make this decision. And of course, we know that current students are provide such great perspective on student life at the respective campuses, and I'm sure any admissions office would be able to help connect you with those students as well. Okay, so oftentimes students ask us what they can do to strengthen their application. And there's certainly a lot of different things that you can do, and I'll go over some of them. But what I always really advise students to do and to think about is do things that you are actually personally interested in and will sort of, will be valuable to you. And don't do things just because you think it's going to make your application look better. Because if you just do something just because, that will likely be, sort of come out. And let's say you ask someone to write you a letter of recommendation from one of those just because activities. Sometimes that can backfire a little bit if someone says, oh, that person wasn't really engaged. So do things because you're interested in them and you're genuinely passionate about them. And again, not just because you want to strengthen your application. So those things can, of course, include volunteering, whether that be medical missions or with underserved populations. It could be travel, of course, awards and recognition, continuing education. If you've done research, you can see the list there. But again, I encourage you to do things that you're interested in as part of this strengthening your application process. Of course, the other thing that you can do is gain additional experience in the medical field. So, one of the questions that we always ask students, and I know this question is asked commonly across the schools, is why do you want to go into this profession? What is it about naturopathic medicine that excites you, that makes you passionate, that makes you want to dedicate your career to this? And so we find that students who shadow NDs or students that have seen NDs as patients, often can often reflect on those experiences and really, those experiences help give you good insight into some of those questions. So definitely encourage you to do that. Conversely, I would say that if you are in a state that doesn't currently regulate NDs, and there just might not be very many of them in your area, I still encourage students to get experience shadowing MDs or DOs or other medical professionals, because that still exposes you to the medical field and in some ways can sort of help refine your answer to why you want to go into something that's a little bit different than what you've been able to shadow. So any of those would give you great valuable experiences. Of course, research is great. As we talked about relevant medical experience, we see a lot of students that are techs in the ER or that have volunteered in the ER. And again, we're not emergency medicine, but that still gives them really great insight into the medical field. All right, so as you're looking for doctors to shadow in your area, these two websites are a great resource to find some. So encourage you to check out the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians and likewise the Canadian Association of NDs. And both of those websites would be a great resource for you to be able to find individuals that you can shadow. I often sometimes hear some frustration from students that, oh, that doctor didn't get back to me. So what I, again, always, really have students consider is keep in mind that these individuals are incredibly busy and sometimes you might need to reach out to them more than once or twice to be able to, make some inroads. And I know that the admissions representatives at most of the schools can also help get you in touch with doctors in their areas. So definitely consider that resource as well.
And Eve, I would just add to that as well that the state associations oftentimes will have conferences. There may be local naturopathic conferences that you can either attend as an attendee or volunteer as a student. And that's another really good way to get some inside information on the career and see things firsthand for yourself and start to network within your local state community or provincial community. So that's just another option out there.
Absolutely. That's a great suggestion. Thanks, Dr. Yanez. All right. So in terms of next steps, if you haven't already, we would encourage you to request information from the schools that you think you're interested in, and maybe the schools that aren't even on your radar. Some of the schools, might present things to you that you didn't even consider. So the best way to get that initial information from the schools is to request that through the AANMC. and you can see the link right there on the best way to do that. And then, you know, as Dr. Yanez said, there are so many things happening in the community, and oftentimes the AANMC, through their newsletter and of course their webinar, makes that information available to prospective students. So if you haven't already, would encourage you to subscribe for their information as another way to keep on top of the information. I will add that they also have great social media on Facebook and Instagram, as do some of the, as do most of the schools. And so that's another way to kind of keep, to get information about the profession by following some of those social media channels. And there are some great upcoming events that the AANMC is hosting that will, again, continue to give you great information about the profession. I'm super excited about the one coming up in May because you'll actually hear from current ND students share their wisdom with you, which again, I just think is so invaluable as you are learning about the profession. And then of course, the one in June is a little bit more focused on a specific health condition and how naturopathic medicine is able to help with that. So I believe that is my last slide. Oh, here we go. So we've already talked about all the schools, but here you can see their logos, so you can kind of start to recognize those as you are learning about the various institutions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just going to add one thing on the event slide. If there is something, we maintain an archive of all of our past events as well. So if there is something that you're interested in, feel free to search the site, because we have a lot of events that we've covered over many different topics. And really the goal of this is to help students understand all of the different ways that naturopathic doctors use the degree and all of the different types of patient populations that are helped with naturopathic medicine. So feel free, if you don't see a webinar up and coming, that's something that you're looking for, that we may very well have spoken on it in the past. I'm also super excited about the May webinar. Actually, the person presenting is the current president of the Naturopathic Medical Student Association, and so he's an amazing speaker and really exciting. So I hope that you can join us again. So Eve, I've got a few questions coming in here, and I wanted to take a chance to start to address those. And one of these is probably best answered by you. So there are two separate questions that came in that are kind of related. One is from someone who's currently a family nurse practitioner, and the other is from an international medical graduate. And can you speak a little bit to advanced standing for folks with prior degrees who have medical licenses and have been practicing?
Sure. That's a great question, and one that we get often. And so of course, all of the schools have some sort of an advanced transfer process. And again, I would say that it really varies by school. So, again, I'll sort of give you a general answer, but, as with some of the other things I've talked about, I would encourage you to reach out to the schools that you're interested in to see what their specific requirements are. Most of the schools will need, quite a bit of information before they can sort of determine what sort of transfer they might be willing to give. Some of the schools won't even go through that process until the student actually applies and is accepted into the program. And that, again, that level of transfer credit really varies by the profession or the degree that the student is coming into, and also how long ago the coursework was completed. And, at least at our institution, that's one of the things that we can consider because most often the thing that students are interested in transferring out of, or transferring in, I should say, are a lot of those basic science classes because it's like, oh, I've already suffered through that. That's definitely something that I would hate to have to take again. But, as a student, you would still have to take NPLEX 1, which is on the basic science coursework. And it's interesting because what I hear from many of our docs is that, oh my gosh, it's, you forget that information so quickly because although you use it when you're practicing, you don't use it in quite the same way that you're tested on it. So a very long-winded answer to say, it really varies by school. The schools will ask for a lot of information, to be able to initiate that process. Although I do think across the board, most of the schools will only consider transfer credit if it's at the master's level or above.
Thank you so much.
Anything to add to that, Dr. Yanez?
No, I think just to circle back on, making sure that you contact the schools, because the type of advanced standing will vary very much depending on like Eve said, the age of your coursework, the type of coursework, and how it matches up to the curriculum, and so at the school that you're looking at. So with medical doctors, we can see anywhere, depending on where the degree was attained, from a year and a half to 2 years to a maximum of 4, depending on what you did and where it was studied. So really, again, it can vary quite a bit, but it's really good to just do your due diligence and contact folks and see what your training would equal in their curriculum. So, and we get that question quite a bit. Oh wow, a lot of questions coming through here. So let's see here. Can you speak on GPAs a bit, Eve?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Can you speak to GPAs and averages on GPAs and what you're looking at for GPA between science and overall?
Sure. I think for most of the institutions, that 3.0 is sort of kind of that minimum baseline. Having said that, I think most of the schools have holistic admissions processes, very similar to the medicine, right? We recognize there is more to a person than just a GPA. So, if you're a little bit below that range, I wouldn't let that, sort of disqualify you. I would definitely, again, reach out to the schools, talk with them. I think most of the faculty or most of the admissions processes are understanding of, I kind of messed up freshman year. I wasn't really focused on what I was doing, but I finally found my passion in my, junior and senior year, but I just wasn't able to get that GPA up as much as I had hoped. So again, like the medicine, we look at applicants holistically, and so we certainly, take some of those extenuating factors into account as we're working with applicants. So I would encourage you again to, don't automatically disqualify yourself. Reach out and talk with the admissions counselors and see, how viable your application might be at any given institution.
Thank you so much. So there is another question here with a person with an undergrad in business, and what are the types of things, like if you have a student who does not have a science background, who's a career changer and changing gears, what would you encourage them to do?
Sure. So again, the first thing I would encourage you to do is, again, I would encourage you to shadow or spend some time as a patient of an ND, just to really solidify in your mind that this is what you want to do. And assuming that you have already done that, I would, again, encourage you to reach out to the schools that you're considering to see what classes you would need to take in terms of science prerequisites to be considered in that program. The prereqs do vary a little bit from school to school, and so most of the admissions offices will work with you in telling you exactly what classes you need to take. Again, I think across the board, most of the schools are willing to accept community courses from community colleges to meet those prereqs, which of course can be a little bit, which are lower in cost than going back to a university. And so I would definitely encourage you to reach out to those admissions offices to do that. But we're going to encourage you to take that anatomy and physiology, some of those chemistry classes, because because you're going to spend a lot of time taking those types of classes in the first typically in the first and second year of the program at any of the schools. So that's where we want you to focus your time from a prereq perspective.
Thank you. So there is, let's see, there's a question about cost of the ND programs and financial aid.
Sure.
And what I can say is that the cost will vary based on the program, the length of study. All of the schools offer 4-year programs, but if you are going to have a 5-year or a 6-year version of the ND program, while the cost of the program isn't different, the cost of living expenses will be incurred during that time of the program. Eve, I don't know if there's any guidance that you offer folks for financial aid on, when they're thinking of the program, how to best prepare themselves financially?
Sure. So, typically I would sort of defer this question to our financial aid manager, but I'm going to channel her a little bit. And I know, what she always encourages students to do, especially if you're coming from, if you're a second career person and maybe have been used to, having an income. Most students aren't really able to work at full time while they're in the program because the programs are quite rigorous. So she would really, encourage you to put yourself on a budget and think about, how much money would be left for living expenses after loans, and make sure that you can sort of, live within those means. She would encourage you to make sure that you don't have any sort of outstanding or unreconciled debts at any previous institution, because that would preclude you from getting a new loan. She would probably talk with you and ask you how much you've taken out in previous loans, whether that be from undergrad or master's programs, because for some of the loans there is a lifetime cap. And if you exceed that, you would have to, take private loans out, which have some different interest rates and things like that. Some students like to take the time to pay off certain debts that they have. So they're not coming into that with, they're not coming into the program with that. So, I know our financial aid manager, just really loves meeting with students about that. And I imagine that the other ones do as well. But again, your first step would be to fill out a FAFSA, just to kind of determine eligibility. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, let's see. So I have a question here about practicing and licensure. And I was in the middle of typing an answer, but I can also say it for the recording. So there's a question: if you complete your degree in Canada, can you return to the States to work, and vice versa? And we get variations of this question as well. Can I go to school in Canada and come back to the States, or can I go, study in the States and practice in Canada? How does that work? How does practicing globally work? And so in North America, graduation from an accredited program is the requirement in order to take the regulatory examinations. So you need to have graduated successfully from one of the naturopathic accredited programs in North America, one of our member schools. And in order to sit for NCLEX, as Eve said earlier, once you sit for NCLEX, each of the states that regulates naturopathic medicine would then have or provinces would have their own requirements for practice. That may include background checks, that may include a state jurisprudence exam, so an examination on the state or provincial laws. And so really going back and forth between Canada and US would be dependent on your ability to get a visa. So if you're a Canadian citizen coming to the US, you would be able to have to demonstrate that you can qualify for a visa to work here legally, and vice versa in Canada. And so I would definitely, if you're looking at that or thinking about that, I would have an immigration attorney or somebody who could provide guidance for you on the legal acquisition of work visas, and what would be required there. But you absolutely can, and we have many grads. I know, Eve, you've got grads at Southwest College who've come from Canada. All of the Canadian schools have US students, conversely. So there is the ability to go across border. It's really just understanding the visa situation and making sure that you're able to have a student or a work visa in order to be there legally. Would you add anything else, Eve?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, we have international students, primarily from Canada, although some from other countries, and we work with them to, help them secure that student visa. So yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And let's see. So I hope Mason that I answered that question sufficiently for you. Let's see here. Oh, gosh, there's so many questions coming in. I'm having a hard time catching up. Eve, would you like to speak on residencies, or would you like me to?
You can certainly speak on them. That's fine.
Okay. So there's a question about residencies in hospitals. Typically, naturopathic doctors are graduates for outpatient clinical care. And so we are trained as primary care doctors with more of a focus on outpatient care. That's not to say that some naturopathic doctors will not train and or work in hospital type settings, but for the most part, most of our graduates are going to be in outpatient or ambulatory settings. And so the naturopathic residencies that we do offer now through the AANMC that are CNME accredited are in a number of different types of settings. Some of them are at schools, some of them occur in outside clinics, but there are a various number of different types of specialties as well. Residencies at this point are not required for practice as a naturopathic doctor, with the exception of Utah. So if you want to pursue residency, as many of our graduates do, it's really to hone in on a set of skills that are built upon from what you learned in undergraduate medical education. And I hope that answered it. It's hard without seeing faces, Eve, to know if you got everything for folks. So I've also gotten some questions on specific states like North Carolina and Georgia in regards to licensure. And I posted earlier in one of the responses a map of ours. We have a website, a webpage on the AANMC website dedicated to licensure. This has actually been a really exciting month for licensure in the naturopathic field. And so there have been two bills that have just passed. Idaho and New Mexico have just this month passed legislation to regulate naturopathic doctors in those states. And so what we're seeing is huge growth in interest and patient interest in legislatures to regulate naturopathic doctors. They see that this is growing and that there's a demand for what we offer, and that regulating it is the safest way to provide care. That said, there are associations of naturopathic doctors in pre-licensed states currently that are working toward legislation. Specifically in North Carolina, they introduced a study bill and are in the process of that. So if you're in North Carolina and you're looking at this, I would definitely recommend getting in touch with the North Carolina Association to see where they're at and if there's anything you can do to help along in that process. But it is a really exciting time. I've been in this field almost 25 years now, and I never in my recollection have seen so much impetus and growth. In the past few years, we've seen Pennsylvania and Rhode Island and Maryland and Massachusetts gain licensure, and now New Mexico and Idaho. And so it's a really exciting time in regards to regulation and licensure. And in Canada, I know that there are a number of the most populated provinces, for the most part, are regulated as well, and there is work in the unregulated provinces to gain regulation too, and they've been seeing a lot of inroads. So really exciting time.
Can I add something to that, Dr. Yanez?
You bet.
So totally agree. We are so excited about the great stuff happening in terms of licensure. So excited for New Mexico and Idaho. I think, the one thing I want to impart you with, though, is that we still need docs, though, in some of those unregulated states, because it's that, it's having sort of those, that army of individuals who are going to help to appeal to the legislature in any given state that doesn't currently have licensure to make that happen. And so, sometimes I think students think that they can't use their degree or they can't go back to an unregulated state. And, in fact, you can, and in fact, we need you, the profession needs you to do that, so you can get, generate excitement amongst, legislatures and others to make that happen. And sometimes what I see is that, sometimes the docs that are in unregulated states tend to be extremely successful because they don't have a lot of competition. And so granted, how, they might use the profession or the medicine might be a little different than someone who's in a licensed state, but that we need you there just as much as we do in regulated states to help get that state regulated at some point.
Thank you. So I have another question about the pre-licensed state. What is it like to be in an unlicensed state? How does that work? And so, what I will say, and I actually was in the state of New York for a number of years. I was the vice president of legislative affairs there. And every state is going to be different. Some doctors, some NDs who are in unlicensed or pre-licensed states will choose to have a secondary degree, like an acupuncture degree or chiropractic degree or a nutrition degree, so that they can work under a separate license and have malpractice insurance. And other doctors may work in other capacities, so they might consult and work in that capacity, or they can have many other ways that they work in a pre-licensed state. But you do need to, and I always tell folks to check in with the state association and make sure that you understand the laws there, so that you are not, and you cannot be accused of practicing medicine without a license. And so there are some restrictions, but I was just speaking with an ND yesterday who was actually surprised. She was in the state of Tennessee and was saying how she was actually surprised how much she was able to work and thrive, and has been there only about a year. And she was a little skeptical. She was returning home to her home state and was a little skeptical, like, oh, what is this going to be like? And wow, I can actually do okay here, and this is better than I thought it was going to be. So I definitely say, if you're going to a pre-licensed state, talk to doctors who've been successful there, find mentors, find out from folks how they've made it work and what it's like. I know plenty of folks who have done it and done it really well. So it's just a matter of getting those mentors and getting some guidance on that. There's another question about Illinois and the naturopathic program there. And so currently the state of Illinois is not regulated for naturopathic medicine. The ILANP is actively working on legislation. I know that their folks have been going to the Capitol pretty regularly this legislative session. And so the ND program there operates with dually licensed folks. So they will have somebody who, like I said earlier, has an active license to practice within the state, and but their education is very comprehensive as well, and so they're able to maintain a solid education for naturopathic doctors in Illinois. Let's see here. Sorry, Eve, I'm just trying to speed read here.
No problem.
Eve, can you talk about, so this is tricky, and I don't have general statistics on this, but there was a question here about students who complete the program and attrition, and I know we have data on career satisfaction for graduating doctors, and NDs repeatedly score really high in career satisfaction with what they do, but how many students actually complete the program and attrition? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as I'm aware, I'm not sure that we have any sort of industry-wide stats on that, stats that are aggregated by the profession from each of the schools. I can certainly speak to what our numbers are at my school, but I'm not sure that we have that information sort of, again, aggregated across the board. For us, it's usually our first year to second year retention is anywhere from 85 to 87%, which is still actually, really high. And, sometimes we find, students realize, maybe this isn't exactly what I thought, or, sometimes they have life circumstances that sort of, prevent them from completing the program. or sometimes, you know, it's academically a little bit more than they were able to handle. That's why, you know, we are so, you know, in terms of students who, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought it would be. That's why we really encourage students to spend time shadowing, you know, making that investment on the front end before you decide to, you know, to jump in and to take out those student loans is so important. You know, and that's why we encourage it so heavily, because we want to make sure that you feel really good about becoming an ND. So.
Thank you. There is a question about prescriptive authority, and as prescriptive authority can vary a bit from state to state, the question was, well, is this taught equally in all of the schools? And I can say that having studied and passed for the NPLEX pharmacology section, it is absolutely tested. And you do need to know how to prescribe conventional prescription drugs as well as natural prescription drugs. And that's one of the things that NDs actually do very well, is understanding the drug-herb and drug-nutrient interactions, because, you know, even if you're not prescribing a pharmaceutical drug yourself, your patients are going to be coming on them, and oftentimes taking many, you know, what we call polypharmacy, so many different types of drugs at the same time. And you need to have a really good understanding of what those are, how they interact in the body, the biochemical pathways, as well as what you're giving naturally and how it interacts with that. And so I can absolutely guarantee that the pharmacology component of naturopathic education is very solid, as is the biochemistry and the biochemical pathways that are processed, that drugs are metabolized and processed within the body. And so that's standard across all of the CNME accredited schools for naturopathic medical education in North America. And so when it comes to the prescriptive authority varying a little bit from state to state, the education is consistent, as is the board examination, and ascertain the assertion that you have to have a baseline knowledge. The other thing, and I know I kind of flashed the slide really quickly, was the AANMC core competencies for clinical education. And as part in the core competencies is full assessment of patients, interactions with other healthcare providers, you know, anything from laboratory diagnostics to radiologic slides and appropriate referrals and things of that sort. So that's an across the board sort of thing in naturopathic medical education. I hope that answered your question, Stephanie. So I know that we are just at time right now, and I want to thank you all for coming today and sharing an hour with Eve and I to answer some of your questions and help you find if this is the right path for you. I am super passionate about this career. I love it. I really respect what naturopathic medicine offers patients and the community, and our, you know, we're coming up on Earth Day, and so I'm going to get a little earthy crunchy on you, but even our planet. And so I really love the respect that we have for nature, and for me personally, that is where naturopathic medicine resonates. So I think that I thank you all for coming, and Eve, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And if you have any additional questions, you can reach us at info@AANMC.org, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have and help you on your way. So thanks so very much for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Yanez, for the opportunity, and thanks to all of you for spending some time with us.